Chapter 22, Risa. Risa Megan Ward watches everything around her closely and carefully. She's seen enough at Stay-Ho to know that survival rests on how observant you are. For 3 weeks, she, Connor, and a mixed bag of unwinds have been shuffled from one safe house to another. It's maddening, for there seems to be no end in sight to this relentless underground railroad of refugees. There are dozens of kids being moved around, but there are never more than 5 or 6 at any given time in a safe house, and Risa rarely sees the same kids twice. The only reason she and Connor have been able to stay together is because they pose as a couple. It's practical and it serves both their interests. What's the expression? The devil you know is better than the one you don't? Finally, they're dumped in a huge empty warehouse in a thundering air traffic zone, cheap realty for hiding unwanted kids. It's a Spartan building with a crowded steel roof that shakes so badly when a plane passes overhead, she half expects it to collapse. There are almost 30 kids here when they arrive. Many of them are kids Risa and Connor had come across over the past few weeks. This is a holding tank, she realizes, a place where all the kids are warehoused in preparation for some final journey. There are chains on the doors to keep anyone unwanted out and to keep anyone too rebellious in. There are space heaters that are useless since all the heat is lost to the high warehouse roof. There's only one bathroom with a broken lock and, unlike many safe houses, there's no shower, so personal hygiene is put on hold the moment they arrive. Put all that together with a gang of scared, angry kids, and you've got a powder keg waiting to explode. Perhaps that's why the people who run the show all carry guns. There are 4 men and 3 women in charge, all of them militarized versions of the folks who, like Sonia, run the safe houses. Everyone calls them the fatigues, not just because they have a penchant toward khaki military clothing, but also because they always seem exhausted. Even so, they have a high-tension determination about them that Risa admires. A handful of new kids arrives almost every day. Risa watches each group of arrivals with interest and notices that Connor does too. She knows why. "You're looking for Lev too, aren't you?" she finally says to him. He shrugs. "Maybe I'm just looking for the apron AWOL like everyone else." This makes Risa chuckle. Even in the safe houses, they had heard the inflated rumors of the AWOL from Akron who escaped from a juvie cop by turning his own trank pistol against him. "Maybe he's on his way here," kids would whisper around the warehouse, like they were talking about a celebrity. Risa has no idea how the rumor started, since it was never in the news. She's also a bit annoyed that she's not included in the rumor. It ought to be a Bonnie and Clyde kind of thing. The rumor mill is definitely sexist. "So, are you ever going to tell them that you're the Akron AWOL?" she quietly asked Connor. "I don't want that kind of attention. Besides, they wouldn't believe me anyway. They're saying the Akron AWOL is this big, buff superhero. I don't want to disappoint them." Lev doesn't show up with any of the new batches of kids. The only thing that arrives with them is an increase in tension. 43 kids by the end of the first week, and there's still one bathroom, no shower, and no answer as to how long this will last. Restlessness hangs heavy in the air like body odor. The fatigues do their best to keep them fed and occupied, if only to minimize friction. There are a few crates of games, incomplete decks of cards, a dog-eared books that no library wanted. There are no electronics, no balls, nothing that would create or encourage noise. "If people out there hear you, you're all done for," the fatigues remind them as often as they can. Risa wonders if the fatigues have lives separate now, apart from saving unwinds, or if this is their life's endeavor. "Why do you do this for us?" Risa asked one of them during their second week. The fatigue had almost been rote in her answer, like giving a soundbite to a reporter. "Saving you and others like you is an act of conscience," the woman had said. "Doing it is its own reward." The fatigues all talk like that. Big picture speak, Risa calls it, seeing the whole and none of the parts. It's not just in their speech, but their eyes as well. When they look at Risa, she can tell they don't really see her. They seem to see a mob of unwinds as more of a concept, rather than a collection of anxious kids, and so they miss all the subtle social tremors that shake things just as powerfully as the jets shake the roof. By the end of the second week, Risa has a pretty good idea where trouble's brewing. It all revolves around one kid she hoped she'd never see again, but it turned up shortly after she and Connor arrived. Roland. Of all the kids here, he is by far the most potentially dangerous. The troubling thing is that Connor hasn't exactly been the image of emotional stability himself this past week. He'd been all right in the safe houses. He'd held his temper. He hadn't done anything too impulsive or irrational. Here, however, in the midst of so many kids, he's different. He's irritable and defiant. The slightest thing can set him off. He's been in half a dozen fights already. She knows this must be why his parents chose to have him unwound. A firestorm temper can drive some parents to desperate measures. Common sense tells Risa to distance herself from him. Their alliance has been one of necessity, but there's no reason to ally herself with many more. Yet day after day, she keeps finding herself drawn to him and worried about him. She approaches him shortly after breakfast one day, determined to open his eyes to a clear and present danger. He's sitting by himself, etching a portrait onto the concrete floor with a rusty nail. Risa wishes she could say it was good, but Connor's not much of an artist. It disappoints her because she desperately wants to find something redeeming about him. If he were an artist that could relate on a creative level, she could talk to him about her passion for music and he would get it. As it is, she doesn't think he knows or even cares that she plays the piano. "What are you drawing?" she asks. "Just a girl I knew back home," he says. Recently, Risa silently suffocates her jealousy in a quick emotional vacuum. "Someone you cared about?" Sort of. Risa takes a better look at the sketch. Her eyes are too big for her face. "I guess that's because it's her eyes I remember most." "And her forehead's too low. The way you've drawn it, she'd have no room for a brain." "Yeah, well, she wasn't all that bright." Risa laughs at that. It makes Connor smile. When he smiles, it's hard to imagine he's the same guy who got into all those fights. She gauges whether or not he'd be open to hear what she has to tell him. He looks away from her. "Is there something you want, or are you just an art critic today?" "I was wondering why you're sitting by yourself." "Ah, so you're also my shrink." "We're supposed to be a couple, and if we're going to keep up the image, you can't be entirely antisocial." Connor looks out over the group of kids busy in various morning activities. Risa follows his gaze. There's a group of kids who hate the world and spend all day spewing venom. There's a mouth-breathing kid who does nothing but read the same comic book over and over again. Mai is paired off with a glum, spike-haired boy named Vincent, who's all leather and body piercings. He must be her soulmate because they make out all day long, drawing a cluster of other kids who sit and watch. "I don't want to be social," Connor says. "I don't like the kids here." "Why?" asks Risa. "They're too much like you." "They're losers." "Yep, that's what I mean." He gives her a half-hearted, dirty look, then looks down at his drawing. But she can tell he's not thinking about the girl. His head's somewhere else. "If I'm off by myself, then I don't get into fights." He puts down the nail, giving up on his etching. "I don't know what gets into me. Maybe it's all the voices. Maybe it's all the bodies moving around me. It makes me feel like I've got ants crawling inside my brain, and I want to scream. I can stand it just so long, then I blow. It happened even at home. Everyone was talking at once at the dinner table. One time we had a family over and the talk got me so crazy, I hurled a plate at the china hutch. Glass flew everywhere, ruined the meal. My parents asked me what got into me and I couldn't tell them." That Connor's willing to share this with her makes her feel good. It makes her feel close to him. Maybe now that he's opened up, he'll stay open long enough to hear what she has to tell him. "There's something I want to talk to you about." "Yeah?" Risa sits beside him, keeping her voice low. "I want you to watch the other kids, where they go, who they talk to." "All of them?" "Yeah, but one at a time. After a while, you'll start to notice things." "Like what?" "Like the kids who eat first are the ones who spend the most time with Roland, but he never goes to the front of the line himself. Like the way his closest friends infiltrate the other cliques and get them arguing so they break apart. Like the way Roland is especially nice to the kids that everyone feels sorry for, but only until nobody feels sorry for them anymore. Then he uses them." "Sounds like you're doing a class project on him." "I'm being serious. I've seen this before. He's power hungry, he's ruthless, and he's very, very smart." Connor laughs at that. "Roland, he couldn't think himself out of a paper bag." "No, but he could think everyone else into one and then crush it." Clearly, that gives Connor a pause for thought. "Good, thanks, Risa. He needs to think. He needs to strategize." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you're his biggest threat." "Me?" "You're a fighter, and everyone knows that. They also know you don't take crap from anyone. Have you heard the kids mumbling about how someone ought to do something about Roland?" "Yeah." "They only say that when you're close enough to hear. They're expecting you to do something about him, and Roland knows it." He tries to wave her off, but she gets in his face. "Listen to me, because I know what I'm talking about. Back at Stayho, there were always dangerous kids who bullied their way into power. They were able to do it because they knew exactly who to take down and win. And the kid they took down the hardest was the one with the greatest potential for taking them down." She can see Connor curling his right hand into a fist. She knows she's not getting through to him. He's getting the wrong message. If he wants a fight, he'll get one. No, you can't take the bait. That's what he wants. He'll do everything within his power to pull you into a fight, but you can't do it. Connor hardens his jaw. "You think I can't take him in a fight?" Risa grabs his wrist and holds it tight. "A kid like Roland doesn't want to fight you. He wants to kill you." Chapter 23, Connor. As much as Connor hates to admit it, Risa's been right about a lot of things. Her clarity of thought has saved them more than once, and now that he knows to look for it, Her take on Roland's secret power structure is right on target. Roland's a master of structuring life around him for his own benefit. It's not the overt bullying that does it either. It's the subtle manipulation of the situation. The bullying almost acts as a cover for what's really going on. As long as people see him as a dumb, tough guy, they don't notice the more clever things he does, such as endearing himself to one of the fatigues by making sure the man sees him giving his food to one of the younger kids. Like a master chess player, every move Roland makes has a purpose, even if the purpose isn't immediately clear. Risa wasn't just right about Roland, she was also right about Lev, or at least the way Connor feels about the kid. Connor hasn't been able to get Lev out of his mind. For the longest time, he had convinced himself it was merely out of a desire for revenge, as if he couldn't wait to get even with him. But each time a new group of kids shows up and Lev isn't among them, a sense of despair worms its way through Connor's gut. It makes Connor angry that he feels this way, and he suspects this is part of the anger that fuels the fights he gets into. The fact is, Lev hadn't just turned them in, he had turned himself in as well, which means that Lev is probably gone, unwound into nothing. His bones, his flesh, his mind shredded and recycled. This is what Connor finds so hard to accept. Connor risked his life to save Lev, just as Connor had done for the baby on the doorstep. Well, the baby had been saved, but Lev had not. And although he knows he can't be held responsible for Lev's unwinding, he feels it is his fault. So he stands there with secret anticipation. Each time there's a new group of arrivals, hoping beyond hope he'll find that self-righteous, self-important, pain-in-the-ass Lev still alive. Chapter 24, Risa. The Fatigues arrive with Christmas dinner an hour late. It's the same old slop, but the Fatigues wear Santa hats. Impatience rules the evening. Everyone's so hungry they crowd noisily around like it's food delivery in a famine. And to make it worse, there are only 2 Fatigues there tonight to serve the meal instead of the usual 4. Single line, yell the Fatigues. There's enough for everybody. Ho, ho, ho. But tonight it's not a matter of getting enough. It's a matter of getting it now. Risa's just as hungry as the others, but she knows that meals are the best time to have some privacy in the bathroom without someone bursting in through the unlocked door or simply pounding repeatedly to get you out faster. Tonight, with everyone clamoring for their holiday hash, there's no one at the bathroom at all. So putting her hunger on hold, she moves away from the crowd and across the warehouse toward the bathroom. Once inside, she hangs the makeshift occupied sign on the doorknob. She pushes the door closed. She takes a moment to examine herself in the mirror, but she doesn't like the straggly-haired, ragged girl she's become, so she doesn't look at herself for long. She washes her face and, since there are no towels, dries it with her sleeve. Then before she even turns for the toilet, she hears a door creak open behind her. She turns and must stifle a gasp. It's Roland who's entered the bathroom. And now he closes the door gently behind him. Risa immediately realizes her mistake. She should have never come here alone. Get out, she says. She wishes she could sound more forceful in the moment, but he's caught her by surprise. No need to be harsh. Roland moves toward her in a slow, predatory stride. We're all friends here, right? And since everyone's eating dinner, we've got some quality time to get to know each other. Stay away from me. Now she's scanning her options, but realizes in this tight space with only one door and nothing she can use as a weapon, her options are limited. Now he's dangerously close. Sometimes I like having dessert before dinner. How about you? The second he's enraged, she acts quickly to hit him, to knee him, to inflict any kind of pain that would distract him long enough for her to fly out the door. His reflexes are simply too fast. He grabs her hands, pushes her back against the cold green tile wall, and presses his hips against her so that her knee can't reach its mark. And he grins as if it was all too easy. His hand is on her cheek now. The shark tattooed on his forearm is inches away and seems ready to attack. What do you say we have some fun and make sure you don't get unwound for 9 months? Risa's never been a screamer. The way she saw it, screaming was a show of weakness, a sign of defeat. Now she must admit defeat, for although she has lots of experience warding off creeps, Roland has even more experience being one. So she screams. She lets loose a blood curdler at the top of her lungs, but her timing is as bad as it could possibly be, because just then a jet roars by overhead, shaking the walls and completely swallowing her scream. You gotta learn to enjoy life, Roland says. Let's call this Lesson 1. That's when the door swings open and over Roland's massive shoulder, Risa sees Connor standing at the threshold, eyes blazing. She's never been happier to see anyone. Connor, stop him! Roland sees him too, catching his reflection in the bathroom mirror, but he doesn't release Risa. Well, says Roland, isn't this awkward? Connor makes no move to tear him away. He just stands there on the threshold. His eyes still rage, but his hands, they're not even clenched into fists. They just hang there limply by his side. What's wrong with him? Roland winks at Risa and then calls over his shoulder to Connor. Better get out if you know what's good for you. Connor steps over the threshold but doesn't move toward them. Instead, he goes to the sink. Mind if I wash up for dinner? Risa waits for him to make a sharp, sudden move, catching Roland off guard, but he doesn't. He just washes his hands. Your girlfriend's had a eye on me since Sonia's basement, says Roland. You know that, don't you? Connor dries his hands on his pants. You two can do whatever you like. Risa and I broke up this morning. Should I turn off the light when I leave? The betrayal is so unexpected, so complete. Risa doesn't know who to hate more, Roland or Connor. But then Roland releases his grip on her. Well, now the mood's ruined, isn't it? He lets her go. Hell, I was just kidding anyway. I wouldn't have done anything. He backs away and offers that smile of his again. How about we wait till you're ready? Then he struts out just as boldly as he had come in, bumping Connor's shoulder on the way out as a parting shot. All her confusion and frustration unleashes at Connor, and she pushes him back against the wall, shaking him. What was that? Were you just going to let him do it? You were just going to stand there and let it happen? Connor pushes her off of him. Didn't you warn me not to take the bait? What? He didn't just follow you in the bathroom. He pushed past me first. He made sure I knew he was following you here. The whole thing wasn't about you. It was about me, just like you said. He wanted me to catch him. He wanted to make me crazy to get me fighting mad. So I didn't take the bait. Risa shakes her head, not in disbelief, but reeling from the truth of it. But what if he... But he didn't, did he? And now he won't. Because if he thinks you and I broke up, you're more useful to him if you're on his side. He might still be after you, but from now on, I bet he'll be killing you with kindness. All the emotions rebound madly through Risa, finally come to rest in an unfamiliar place, and tears burst from her eyes. Connor steps forward to comfort her, but she pushes him away with the same force she would have used against Roland. Get out, she yells. Just get out. Connor throws up his hands, frustrated. Fine, I guess I should have just gone to dinner and not come here at all. He leaves, and she closes the door behind him in spite of the line of kids now waiting for the bathroom. She sits down on the floor, her back against the door so no one can get in as she tries to get her emotions under control. Connor had done the right thing. For once, he had seen the situation more clearly than she, and had probably ensured that Roland wouldn't physically threaten her again, at least for a while. And yet there's a part of her that can't forgive him for just standing there. After all, heroes are supposed to behave in very specific ways. They're supposed to fight, even if it means risking their lives. This is the moment Risa realizes that even with all his troubles, she sees Connor as a hero. Chapter 25, Connor. Holding his temper in the bathroom was probably the hardest thing Connor ever had to do. Even now, as he storms away from Risa, he wants to lay into Roland. But blind rage is not what the moment needs, and Connor knows it. Risa's right. A brutal all-out fight is exactly what Roland wants. And Connor's heard from some of the other kids that Roland has fashioned himself a knife out of some metal he found lying around the warehouse. If Connor launches at him with a rage of swinging fists, Roland will find a way to end it with a single deadly thrust. And he'll be able to get away with it, claiming it was self-defense. Whether Connor can take him in a fight isn't the question. Even against a knife, Connor suspects he might be able to either turn the blade against him or take Roland out in some other way before he has a chance to use it. The question is this: is Connor willing to enter a battle that must end with one of them dead? Connor might be a lot of things, but he's no killer. So he holds his temper and plays it cool. This is new territory for him. The fighter in him screams foul, but the other side of him, a side that's growing steadily stronger, enjoys this exercise of silent power. And it is power, because Roland now behaves exactly the way he and Risa want him to. Connor sees Roland offer his dessert to Risa that night as an apology. She doesn't accept it, of course, but it doesn't change the fact that he offered it. It's as if Roland thinks that the attack on him could be wiped away by feigning remorse. Not because he's actually sorry for what he did, but because it serves Roland's needs to treat her well now. He has no idea that Risa and Connor have him on an invisible leash. Connor knows it will only be a matter of time, however, until he chews his way through it.